Ashish Maharishi has been in constant touch with Rudolf Elmer since April 2010. Explain to our viewers, Ashish, how you got in touch with Rudolf Elmer and the process the story has really taken, because this is really a labor which has been going on for the last 9-10 months, taking the shape that we put this story out this evening. How did the process begin?
Well, it was just an article. Let me tell you that I just went through an article in the Guardian, and which very clearly said that, Mr. Rudolf, this was an interview by Guardian with Mr. Rudolf Elmer, and he said that he has data to prove that yes, black money stashed in these Swiss bank accounts, it exists there. And I just tried. It was just a Google search. It was through the computer that I mailed him, and he responded back. That was the most interesting thing, that he responded back. We were in continuous touch for almost 4-5 months, and before Rudolf Elmer gave this CD to Julian Assange, I had almost lost hope, because I was in touch with many investigative agencies in India as well. I had shared this data with them, and they had no results, because they also were hands down on how to go about doing it. But since we have brought it out, and we expect now the investigative agencies to work on this. But I have a question to ask to all investigative agencies. If whistleblower like Rudolf Elmer can be accessed by me, by a reporter who works for a news channel, why can't investigative agencies talk to him, bring him to India? He can bring so many details, and he can easily divulge whatever data he wants, the investigative agencies want.
That's a very important point you're making, because all it took, Ashish, really was a Google search to get in touch with the person who claimed he had this information. He sent to us these account details, and that's how the story took shape. And Vipul Malik, that really highlights how uninterested India's investigative agencies are, because Ashish, with a little bit of ingenuity, if he's able to get so far, if the CBI, the Enforcement Directorate, was serious, some of these people who've taken thousands of crores out of India would now be in jail.
You see, there is a FATF, a Financial Action Task Force. It is an intergovernmental, multi-layered body. The purpose of creating that body was to curb the money laundering. What has been that body doing all these years? Just meeting overseas and somewhere in Geneva or Paris, and it has 29 countries which are signatory to that, 2 commissions, one European Commission and one Gulf GCC, Gulf Council. All they are signatories. They share every information, and what the result they are bringing is that to amend the double taxation avoidance agreement. I don't know how many agreements have been amended, but within the amendment, I think now they are probably waiting for the budget, and in my opinion, possibility of another voluntary disclosure scheme for all these people is not far off in the next budget, so that all those who have been identified, or somehow the information like Ashish has got it, they can get hold of, and they pay the tax and get out of the system.
So far we've looked, Sandeep, at Rudolf Elmer's version. You spoke to people in the Swiss banking industry. We'll play that interview out in just a bit, but while we wait for that, explain to our viewers, what is the Swiss banking industry doing? Because secrecy is there as on the earth, and now those walls of secrecy are crumbling.
I spoke to Jean-Marc Felix. He's on the executive board of the Swiss Banks Association, and he clearly said that what has Rudolf Elmer done? Rudolf Elmer is a renegade and a rogue Swiss banker. He has breached the confidentiality laws. He has breached the secrecy, the law of omerta, as it is, the code of silence that is followed by the Swiss banks. He has breached that, and he will go to jail. These are his exact words. And I was amazed, because as you rightly said, what is the raison d'etre of the Swiss banking industry? It is secrecy, and that's how they've been making money. But I also want to point out another thing. I've sifted through the data sitting with Ashish, the compact disc that was sent by Elmer to Ashish. It's the same disc that was given to Julian Assange, and it gives you an idea of how this thing works. Myriad names like Drummond, names like Creto, names like Shangril, all sorts of names, entities have been registered in these names. It's so difficult to see beyond the apparent in all these names. And there are, Ashish can tell us more, there are names and names and names, and it's a multi-layered thing. You open one account, there are sub-accounts. There are several sub-accounts in every single thing. So it's practically impossible from where we are sitting. It's practically impossible to get to the heart of those names who are involved in this activity, illegal activity.